Thank you so much, everybody, for coming for this edition of Relationships with Tune In with Tony. And today, Spirit wanted to really cover many grounds, many different aspects of relationships. And we are in the weekend of Mother's Day. So we just want to thank all the mothers that have done so much. This is the cornerstone to our society, motherhood. And if you're a single dad, I mean, you have to take the role on mother and all of that. It's such a it's such an important job, and it's something that gives us that higher purpose, seeing our kids grow in all of the things that we give them to perceive and get them to learn how to find the answers on their own. That's really where it all happens. In this relationship, again, since we're on Mother's Day, one of the first relationship a child has, of course, is with its mother. And long before the child is born, the child has a connection to the mother right away. I mean, we know this from biology itself, but from an energetic perspective, the child, while they're still in energy form, non-physical, chooses the mother or the family that it wants to be involved in so that it could learn and grow in whatever their destiny is supposed to be. So they make various promises and various goals, I suppose you could call it, as to what they want to accomplish in that life. And then when they connect to the mother, all of that is supposed to, in a sense, have that connection, so that before they have any connection to anyone else, there is that tender, loving, caring energy first, because the child is coming out of that environment exactly. I mean, when we are in non-physical, that's all we know is love, joy, abundance. There's no limit to anything. There's no fear. It's just this beautiful sense of this beauty. And so our involvement when we come into physical form is to get all the other stuff, is to be able to feel what sadness feels like, because they don't know. To be able to really know what it's like to cry. Spirit doesn't cry. They don't have tear ducts. But when we feel that incredible joy, or sometimes there's so much joy that we end up crying, or we look at something and we tear up, that's what we really are looking for, because now we have a physical result out of something that we have felt in our spirit. And the child wants to feel that. So in the time where they're in the womb, they learn how the mother laughs, how the mother really coordinates with everybody else, because it can hear through the walls of the stomach or the womb that they're in. They hear the father, they hear the dog barking, they hear all of that, and all of it gives them a setup for when they come in. They can't wait to grab onto life and just to hold it. And this is how we see when a newborn baby is born. You try and put your finger close to their hand and they'll grab it. They just want to grab everything because they want to experience life so much. And it is that joy of being able. And so for the first while, they are just like sponges. They absorb everything because that's what they want to do. That's their karma, is to be able to come in. And it is the first time that they have been a spirit, and it blends into biology. Because up until then, they were pure energy. There was no biology. It's just energy. But when we come into physical form, we mesh in with our biology, and then we start having a relationship with ourselves. What's it like to be me? And a child never has any problem knowing who they are. If you look at any child, they don't care what they look like. They could be bald, no teeth, yet they're always laughing. They can be entertained with a plastic bottle for hours. They could be just taking a piece of paper when you're ripping it, and they could be laughing. Now, we've seen movies and we've seen videos that depict this, where any energy, even if a person sneezes, they could be laughing, and it makes you laugh, and it makes them laugh. So that has that contagious thing in there. But for the first while, they're just like, they want to be in a relationship with everything. In the beginning, though, they learn that once they become interactive with other people, they start seeing little subtleties about maybe how other people are not perhaps enjoying life as maybe they could or they should, and they start pulling away. When we start looking at why people pull away from us, and that's not always something that is taught, but if it's your perception of the world that everybody should love you, but then somebody move away, then well, what's wrong with me? Why did they pull away? Why did they do that? And so that's the first time where we start looking at perception, how we perceive the world. Because again, in spirit form, there's no such thing as perception. There's just truth. There's just truth. That's it. That's all they know. When we come into physical form, we have perception and we also have the truth. And over our entire life, that's what we're trying to balance. What is the truth and what is sort of fake? What is sort of just perception? Something that you assume is right, but isn't really right. When does that happen? There's no real age for this, but it is about how we are looking at the world. And when we stop asking ourselves, what is this? And we start just taking everything at face value that this is true, then that becomes a belief. It's very difficult to talk somebody out of a belief. When we believe that our relationships should be loving, they should be lots of joy, intimacy, time together, but yet in the life that perhaps we were raised in, there was always fights, there were always lots of yelling, there was always discord. And then so it gives us that sense that, okay, what is the relationship? Is this what a relationship is? Because it doesn't consist, and it doesn't jive for whatever that you want to do. So if you're seeing that some relationships are turning into what people are seeing as rejection or abandonment, that's when we need to either step in or we need to ask ourselves, what is really going on? Is it the other person? But it's usually the way that we perceive it. Somebody had once said, well, how do we are giving and receiving? I mean, I've been to a couple of weddings already, and during the wedding, it would come out that all the things that you would give as part of the relationship. And it's always about not what I'm going to get out of the relationship, like I'm going to get an extra person coming in and they can share the expenses. I'm going to get all this intimacy. I'm going to get all of this. We're going to work together with something. And it's all about what is in it for the other person. That relationship will never sustain itself. And that could be the same in a business partnership. That's the same for any partnership. If you're just looking at what you're going to be able to get out of something and not what you're giving, it's not sustainable, because people will start to observe that every time something great happens, you're around and they're wanting the fruits of that labor. But yet when things aren't so going very well, then they're not around. Oh, I don't believe in that. But yet when it happens, they're right there to sort of be in the parade. And so people will say, oh, I keep thinking every time something good happens, someone's always there for the gravy train. And so people will start to see, okay, this is not going to be perhaps. And so people will see this. But if we're only looking at what we're getting, this is what we have to start looking at. The relationship will start dwindling when we start doing that. But in all of that, questions come up. Well, then how do you maintain a relationship? How does a relationship sustain itself? And so when we look at the question, what are you doing with your partner or to your partner that makes them feel special? That makes them feel that every time you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to see them, that you're sharing their ideas. And when they say that how their day is going, you're actually listening. You're not looking at your phone. You're not looking at the TV or the person behind them. And you're always very distracted. You're focused on them. And even at a point where in the discussion, there's a loud noise in the background, but they're still fixated on you. How does that make you feel? It makes you feel special. And so when we look at relationships like that, they last 40, 50, 60 years plus, because they're constantly looking at the other person and they're so gentle. Recently, I saw a couple that celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary. And he was asked, what is the secret to being married 70 years? And he says, I always look at my wife as what I can give her. And she was bending down, and he puts his hand on the corner of the table so when she gets up, she won't accidentally hit it. These are all very subtle. And to the average person, it just looks sort of silly. But he's done this his whole life, looking after their partner. And that's why when you feel special, why would you want to leave that kind of a relationship? Those relationships are sustainable, as they are always. But when you look at how you run your business, how you run your career, all the projects that you're in, and you're engaged, and you're funny, you're engaging, and you even go to, let's say, parties that have people there, and you're considerate and you're respectful. And so is that the same person that goes home at night? What is that partner getting? Or are they getting the leftovers? Or are you doing it the same way where you're still considerate and respectful? Or does it stop because you're just so exhausted from being nice that now whatever's left on the plate, that's what your partner gets? And you'll probably feel that maybe something like that might have happened to you. But when was the last time you looked at a child, or you looked at a friend, or family member or something, and you actually looked in their eyes and said, I appreciate you. I love everything about you. I love the way you laugh. I love your jokes, even the bad ones. I still think they're funny. I love the way that, you turn things around, and it's always something positive. And I just want you to know that even if you did something bad, I still love you. You did something good and you did something successful. I'm there to cheer you on. There's nothing you could do that could possibly change the way I feel about you. I just wanted you to know that. And what Spirit says, when a person is so open and their throat chakra is wide open, their expression is open, then what this does is a number of things. But the biggest benefit is it gives the other person the opportunity that if there is any assumptions or doubt in their mind that they have any value, or if they don't know that they're even thought of as something valuable, then it squashes that, because now they've heard it. When you hear it through your ears, it goes through your sensories, and it's part of your third eye, then it locks in a little easier than just assumes that mom or dad or my friend or my business partner likes what I do, because they have to assume things. You know what happens when we assume so much, right? It's not the same. When you look at how we are looking at things, we don't want to start guessing at what it is people are thinking. In other words, we have to separate from a relationship perspective. We have to separate how we feel about people from how people feel from us. In other words, if you might see somebody as just adorable, they're fun, they're charismatic, they're at parties, let's say, and they're always bubbly, and you have a lot of respect for them. But whenever you deal with them in any way, they make you feel lonely. They make you feel like you're just a number. They make you feel like you really don't matter. There's somebody else that I really have to talk to, so I'll wait till you finish. That kind of thing. And that is the reality of a relationship. But can you see that if a person is even a tiny bit insecure about themselves, but they really like you, how they would hold on to that? You're holding on to a relationship that the person is amazing, but that is not reciprocated. That same respect and that same charismatic feeling is not coming back. And when we are holding on to that, and that happens all the time in my industry, people come to me and they just can't let go of a relationship, and it's been years of verbal, physical abuse, and I said, it's not me to tell them to leave. And they would say, well, my friends keep saying I should leave. I says, well, what do you think? He says, yeah, but he's a good provider. He's this and that. And he says, okay. then that's your reality of that situation. But the problem isn't the relationship, is it? You can see pretty clearly from this perspective, since we're away from that situation, we can look at it more objectively, that it's not the relationship that's the problem. It's the insecurity that if I let this relationship go, who's going to love me? Thinking that no other love will come to you. And that, again, is an assumption. People will always make you feel the way that you are. They'll set it up the way that they feel in the way that you feel. I'll give you an example. Let's say a child has a temper tantrum in a supermarket. Like they're on the ground, they're stamping their feet and they're yelling. How do you feel? Well, I had this done once and I felt helpless. I'm not sure if you feel like that, but what do you do with a child with that stamping their feet and yelling, and it's embarrassing? So I feel helpless. And what a lot of psychologists and others have said about this, including, and I got this confirmed by Spirit, is that is how the child feels. Because a child would rather be at home watching TV or would rather be, in the park, but they're sort of being dragged through aisles and aisles of food that they can't have or toys that they can't have. So they just do a meltdown and they just feel helpless. And that's their expression for helplessness. And if you feel that, how good is it to tell a child to stop it? Because that's what happens, right? In many of the examples that I've seen in supermarkets, when there's a tantrum, then the parent says, stop it, or we're going to go home. Stop it. Well, if you feel helpless and that somebody told you while you're feeling helpless to stop it, stop feeling helpless. Well, that's so inefficient. That's not going to be the problem. So what they're saying, what Spirit is saying, is that when you are feeling that from other people in that relationship, base your solutions on how you feel, not what's orchestrating in front of you, because it's vastly different. A child that's going through a tantrum is very different than being helpless. Well, how would I react if I feel helpless? Well, the first thing I would do is just retreat. The old adage, if you're in a hole, stop digging, sort of thing. If you can't get out, stop digging. And so when you're going through that, okay, let's just get a hug. And how do you make them feel so now they're helpful? How do you make them feel so they don't feel so helpless? That's what you do. So that's one way that we could sort of mitigate that. There's an Egyptian legend that says when you go to heaven, you're asked two questions. First question is, did you find joy in your life? And the second question is, the people that were around you, did you give them joy because of you? And if both those answers are yes, then you're already living in heaven. When we look at those, the way, it just seems so simple, doesn't it? And it is, but our mind tends to overcomplicate things because that's what it does. It feels everything has to be figured out rather than felt. And that's what we spend our whole life trying to do, how to separate our feelings from our head. Because the longest distance we're ever going to travel in our mind or in our life is between our head and our heart. Those 18 inches. It's the heart. You get them separated at the right time. There are times when they got to be together, but then it's a collaboration. It's not dictatorship. It's not the mind saying, okay, we're going to do this. Oh, by the way, what do you think? Well, that's not going to be very good. There are relationships that do that. I've already made up my mind. I'll just get your 2 cents in, and whatever you say will be ignored, and then we're going to do this. How do you feel? So in those relationships, what you'll have to decide whether or not that's going to be optimal for you. And that happens in a business decision too. When you're with a business partner, when you're with partners that are in any kind of relationship. I was scrolling through a couple of articles and I came upon this one that I thought was really cool. It says, there are 3 ways to improve the relationship of your horse. It was a rancher that published this. He says the first one is be present for your horse. Know what they are thinking, and based on how they act in subtle ways, react to that. Don't look at just what they're doing. Look at their subtleties, their body language, and so on, how they're moving around and they're running and jumping. Maybe they might not normally do that, but they're feeling something. The second thing is look at signs of fear. Focus on them becoming back to you. Let the horse do what it wants to do because it doesn't know what to do. If it's just fearful, it's just going to be walking and you won't understand what it's doing. Don't judge your horse based on what they're doing wrong. Just wait until they figure it out, until they realize that you're calm. They'll sense it and they'll come towards you calm, looking for leadership. The third one is when your horse is learning something new and challenging, give them time to relax and come to a balanced position so that they can move confidently to something else. And after reading this, I'm thinking, well, it doesn't have to be a horse. This is sort of applies to kids. This applies to cats and dogs. It applies to people. And it's interesting because horses are very considered a spiritual animal. They know what you think miles away. They just have this innate sense of things. And spirit, brought in a horse in many ways. There are times where I'll have clients that have a dog and it won't go away. And he says, well, in another life, this used to be your horse. And it didn't want to come in that way because we can't have horses in our homes anymore. So it would come in and decide to come in as something smaller, like a dog or something, but have the same loyalty, the same, everything else is the same in that. So I thought that was great. Couple of stories here just before we start our listening meditation. The story is about all of the relationship itself. As we go through it, we can't forget the most important relationship, and that's the relationship with you, the relationship of yourself. How are you treating yourself? Are you in good company? Are you okay being by yourself? Notice how I didn't say, are you okay being alone? Because although it seems the same to the untrained eye, being alone and being by yourself are vastly two different things. Vibrationally, being alone means you could be in a crowd of people and nobody would pay attention to you. I have one client that has a huge family, 37 cousins, and like when they get together, the town knows it, sort of thing. It's a big family. Yet this person with that huge family with 8 children in their family, a spouse or siblings and everything, they feel alone. And yet I have people that are an only child and they feel great. So it isn't the amount of people around you, is how well are you by yourself? In other words, how well are you thinking of yourself? And I looked at this one story, and it was a little boy named Leo and his father. They were trying to sort of have this father-son time, and it never really did work because Leo, in this story, he was always angry. Always angry at something. Something happened in school, and he'd be flipping out. He'd be fighting in school. He'd be pushing people. He comes home, and there's problems there, problems on the school, but like there was always discord wherever Leo went. And the father sort of went by this, and he says, the reaction in which my son is going through this is making me feel helpless. So by me telling him to stop that is not going to be good. What we just learned, we can't just say stop being helpless. So what do? I have to work out a situation where he's going to learn something. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to do something. So he walked into a woodshed and he grabbed a bag of nails and he brought it to Leo and he says, Leo, I'm going to make you a deal. I have a lot of respect for you, but you've got some turmoil inside of you that you feel you just need to bang on things. So what I want you to do is every time you get angry, every time you are heated and you just feel like you're losing control, I want you to nail a nail into that fence. Here's a hammer. The first day, Leo hammered 37 nails in the fence. The next day, he just kept going. And over time, he realized that it got his frustrations out nailing the hammers, because they were like 4-inch nails. And if you've ever had a 4-inch nail about this big, hammer it, and it takes a while. Once when it was in, he realized that, why am I getting upset? And so he started having more self-reflections. And as the days and weeks passed, his anger started to subside. His anger started to realize that, there's no real need to get angry. And he had less and less. And then there became a day where he had no anger whatsoever. The whole day was perfect. And he said to his dad, he came to his dad and he says, Dad, I went through an entire day and I've had no anger issues. He says, son, I'm proud of you. That's great. So what I want you to do is, from now on, every time you have a day like that, where you have no anger, I want you to go to the fence and pull out one nail. And so Leo did. And there was a lot of nails in the fence. And so as the days and weeks and months passed, Leo started pulling out one nail at a time for every day he had no anger, until he pulled out the last nail. And he said, Dad, I got some great news. I pulled out the last nail. He says, son, I'm proud of you. So they walked over to the fence and he says, Leo, look at the fence. What do you see? He says, I see a lot of holes. He says, yeah. So the lesson here is, when you're angry and you lash out, even though you might pull out whatever toxic energy you have given people, it still leaves a mark. It still leaves a hole somewhere that they have to somehow fill from what you've done. So be mindful, breathe, walk away, do whatever you need to do, but don't lash out and have anger in there unless you're defending yourself. And that just goes with that whole self-reflection, where you look at yourself, and that strengthened the relationship between dad and the son, but it also strengthened Leo's inside. Whatever was angry, he was able to get it out of the fence. Another story that I saw that was I thought that was really cool, about learning how to mitigate yourself and learning how to just look at your own energies was, I'm not sure if you know Jim Quick. He's a memory guy. He's got a few books out, and in one of his books, he says he's walking home one night and he looks up and he sees this massive bird. I don't know if it's a crow or a raven, but it was this massive bird on a twig on a tree. And the bird was so heavy, like the twig was bending. And he just looked at it. He said, wow, that's a huge bird. And he stopped and looked at it and he says, that twig's about ready to break. And he just waited and waited. But then he looked at the reaction of the bird and there was no reaction. Like the bird was just sitting there calmly, no problem. And he started to ask himself, why is the bird so calm? And then it hit him. Well, the bird is calm because it trusts its ability to fly. He's not really anchored, or he's not really linked in to however strong the branch that he's on. It doesn't matter, because if it breaks, I'll fly. And so that's a metaphor for us when we start relying on other people as they are our branch. They are our twig. And man, if they break, or if something happens to that, I'm devastated. If something happens to something else, my job, my career, my bank account, whatever it is that you're relying on as your branch, something that you're sitting on and you're relying on other people to make sure it's strong, that breeds a little bit of insecurity, because you have to rely on other people. And quite frankly, Spirit says there's lots of examples out there where humans have shown that they're not always reliable. They're not always there for you. So you've got to figure out a way to be able to educate yourself and have the ability that no matter what happens, you can always fall on your own 2 feet. You can always fly. You'll be okay. It doesn't matter. So you can be calm on even a shoestring of a budget and you can still make it. You're not relying on something else. So this is a great reminder how we could use our own energies, and that brings that relationship of yourself much higher, that I can do this. You know, you could have losses in your life. You could have things that it's way beyond your control. And for a while, just as that bird might, if that branch did break, for a little bit, it would fall, as we all do. But somewhere in there, your wings are just going to open up and you're going to find a way to fly onto something else. You're not going to be devastated. You are not a penguin. If that would have been a penguin, it would have hit the ground. But it was what it was, because that's how confident that energy is. So Spirit is reminding us to be that confident. So in this meditation, it's been specifically designed to resonate with the energy of trees. It's our relationship with nature. When we have relationship, it's not just with people. Everything, including your home, has an intelligence. Because when I walk into a home, being a feng shui consultant, I can feel what's going on in the home way before they tell me they have money problems, way before they tell me there's some discord with their pancreas, or the house is telling me. And why is it telling me? Because I am connecting to it. I have a relationship with building. I have a relationship with everything. It's just that you have to have not have to, you just cultivate yourself to have the sensitivity of feeling that. It's a skill and it can be learned. And it's just a matter of time if you want to invest that. So people will rent my senses so they could find out what's going on in their life, and that's fine. But I always try and teach them how it's done so that they can do it themselves if they wish. In this meditation, it's a grounding, it's a security, it's our ability to attract resources, to bring in money, to bring in safety, to bring in warmth. You know, Maslow's first level of survival is food, water, shelter, okay? All of that is all that ability to bring in things so that we feel safe, that we feel that our families and we are going to be okay. And the tree itself has the resonance of the earth. Now, the Schumann's resonance, in case you're not familiar with it, is 7.83 hertz. The hertz means that's vibrations per second. So it's very low. If I showed you one of my tuning forks here, this tuning fork is 440 hertz. So 440 vibrations per second. This is 7.8 hertz, so it's very low. It's almost indetectable. That has been built into the meditation along with several other tuning forks, and it's all grounding stuff, all things that make you feel like you belong, that you feel strong inside. And some of the perceptions of what people have told you that might be you isn't you. It's just their perceptions, and you'll start to see that the more times you listen to these sounds. But it's all about starting to rebuild something within the tree. So when the music starts, I want you to envision. Now, if you're outside, it's even better. If you can look at a tree, or if you can, next time you're in the woods, you can actually play this in audio, because I have it in podcast. I will have it in a video soon, but today we're going to play the podcast version. So when we hear that, I want you to envision putting your left hand on the bark. And just envision this large tree, not a bush, because those are like children trees. We want to get something wiser, so it's like a larger tree. And put your left hand, if you're right-handed, you put your left hand on the tree and your right hand on your heart. And you ask the tree various questions. It could be something like, how long have you been waiting for me to get here? What can they share that I am ready to hear at this time in my life? What is just like anything about the world? Now, some of you that are just working and you're just starting your journey, you just simply say, what do I need to know? That's a very simple, open-ended question, and let's see what you get. Those of you that are tactile, the touchy-feely, you'll start to feel more temperature going through your body, the hot-cold scenarios. You'll start to become more dizzy, let's say. So you won't always get it in just verbal or something in sight. A lot of people are visual, so you might see pictures, which is great. But in my case, I don't see pictures. I'm sort of blind and I don't hear either. So I'm deaf as well. But my sensitivity to feelings are very strong. And it's almost like radar. I can almost see the impression around something. I don't know what it is yet, but I'll see the impression around something and then realize, oh, that's what it is. And then I'll say yes. So it's that kind of thing. So you just get your whole senses. You're a sensory being. You can do this. Just simply wait for the answer. Like if you tell me, Tony, what's the weather out there? And then before I would answer, you would say, oh, okay, maybe I won't go on a bike ride today. Well, it says, okay, I didn't give you an answer yet. Or you can say, oh, I'm not getting anything. So when you ask a question, just wait long enough to get something. Some people will see colors. Other people will see symbols or numbers or just maybe something that happened 25 years ago at a park that you have never really remembered. All of a sudden that comes up because spirit has access to everything you've ever done, everything. And it'll pull it up like a file. Boom, here you go. And you'll say, oh, okay, that's odd. Why would I get that? And you ask the spirit or ask the tree, why did you send me this? What's the purpose? And then wait again. Okay, so let's have some fun with this. I want you to get yourself comfortable. Okay, if you do have earphones, that would be great. Okay, if you're in a room where you want to lie down and you just want to hear it, just bring up your speaker up pretty loud so that you can hear all the subtleties, because there's some very subtle stuff happening in the background that you're going to hear, and just make it an experience. Okay. So we'll see you in about 13 or 14 minutes, okay? connecting to the tree. Now this is virtually. It's always a little stronger if you actually put your physical hand on the tree and listen to this with your earphones on a phone or something. But it does work, just by visualizing it as well. Uh, just to give you an idea, years ago, I had a school project that I had to go to an elderly person and get a story for this assignment. And there was this Mr. I forget his name. I think it was Mr. Jones, if I recall. But anyway, I asked this old man if I could have a talk with him, and just about his family and about his history and about that. And one of the stories that he had was on a farm. He There was a storm the night before, and it uprooted one of the trees in the woods. And so he went over to the tree, and the whole thing came right up, roots and all, and there was this huge crater in there. And he goes, "Oh, that'll be fun cutting up," and all of that. And so the next day, his grandkids came over and they were playing in the backyard, and they were playing in this crater, playing on the tree, jumping off, and all of that. And they had a great time, and they got dirty and everything else. And so they stayed for the day. And the following day, he got a chainsaw and an axe and was starting going to cut up this tree. And he said, "I went over to the tree and I just wanted to see how much the axe would go in. When I hit the tree, and it wasn't really that hard, the whole tree stood up and the tree started to go vertical again. And it filled the crater, obviously. The hole that was in the crater, it went up. And then he thought of his grandkids. They were playing in the crater the day before, and he just started weeping and crying. And then I asked this tree, "I haven't thought of that in years. Why would you say, why, like, what brought that on to show me this?" And the response was, get ready, "I knew the kids were there. So I stayed secure until they left." In other words, the trees knew that the kids were in the crater, and if they would have stood up, of course, they would have been killed. I knew that, and I knew how important it was for the old man, so I stayed put. And then all it took was just a hit, and then but it was just like that, teetering, literally. But the kids were jumping on it, and they did all they could do. It should have stood up, but it didn't, because the tree held itself, and I had to get my head wrapped around that. So just so you know, that when you're getting answers like that, always ask, "Why would you show me that?" And the answer was pretty remarkable. So it's like a puzzle piece, and you're figuring it out. Like if I were to say, "If you could figure this out and find it from spirit, I'll give you $10,000." Would that be enough motivation for you to ask more questions? You know? So it's like that. It comes in small bits. I think the longest insight I've ever had is the one I'm going through now. I'm going through a long project, and it was supposed to conclude last year, February. It was over a year and a half old, and I'm still getting insight on it. So it's not over. So I'm constantly getting little things of what to do and how this is all gonna work out. But it doesn't mean yours will take that long. It's just that they know that I'm persistent and I don't give up, no matter what. And I'll just keep going. And if they know that, then that's great. Then they'll just keep sending me whatever that they can at the time. When I say they, we have a relationship. It's a relationship with spirit, and it's so strong. I trust them. They trust me. Like this video was done through them. I was just the guy that pressed the physical button. I take no credit for it because I wouldn't have been able to do it without them, and vice versa. They can't make it physical unless they use me. So, but they still created it. So that's still, when a mother creates a child, it's not that just because we said hello to the child that we know everything about the child. it's still the creation is the most important part of it. So Spirit created this tree meditation, and again, every time I listen to it, I'm getting something different. This old man in the crater never happened before, but today, with this energy, this collection of people, it brought me to another place, and so it's part of that journey. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope this was of value. This tribal, really, really great relationship thing. Speaking about relationships, I want to wish all mothers a happy Mother's Day this weekend. It's going to be an amazing day. I'm going to be seeing Cindy and Laurel tomorrow at an event with Penny Lee, part of our group, and looking forward to that. And it's just joyous. All I can leave you with is the way you see the world is the way everything else will flow. And in other words, when something happens that to other people may seem like it's bad, it could be, oh, okay, it could mean something to you, and it's something positive. Not getting a job just means, okay, I guess that was a crappy job. I'm going to have something better. So see the world and perceive the world in its truth of what's really going on, not what you're seeing. Okay. I hope this was great, guys, and have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. From 1 week to the next, I don't know whether I'm still going to be here. I mean, every week, the Spirit keeps wanting this information to get out, this insight to get out. It's not really information. It's insight as to what's really, happening in the globe, what people are praying for. They're listening. And this is one avenue that it comes out. So if you know somebody going through a difficult time, that I don't charge anything for this. I get my resources in other ways. This is an appreciation session, and so thank you for those that have sent a gift last week and that in the weeks before. Always appreciated. But it is really an honor for Spirit to be able to release this through me, being able to help anyone that is ready to listen. So happy Mother's Day, people. Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Okay, love you all.
Thanks,
Love
Tony.
you.
Bye.